Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first return episode of Our Panel. This is our first episode of season 3. Kicking off in the spring 2021. We are live, so we usually give folks a few minutes to come on in. Hi, welcome to our panel. So we usually give people a few minutes to come in. While you're waiting, I encourage you to grab a drink of your choice, within the cup of your choice, and come on back and join us. We'll wait just a few minutes. I would say about a minute after, 2 minutes after 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time before we begin. But we have some really good gems for you today. We're joined here by our panelists, Dr. Rose and Dr. Q, and we have an amazing guest panelist with us, Dr. India Hall. Dope. So please hang on in there, grab yourself something to eat, a little snack, a little something to sip on, and we'll get into this episode. Today's episode is going to be so powerful. I mean, all of our episodes are a topic of discussion. It is something that we try to center that is meaningful to us. But today's episode is going to be something I think we need. It's going to be a part of our care for today. So grab you something to chew on, something to drink, and we'll see you tuned in. Thank you, Erin. And we'll see you soon. And, just a reminder, we are live. So this is a live broadcast. If you have comments or questions and want to engage in this conversation, please do put it into that comment box down below. This is, our panel was created for us, by us, like a FUBU kind of situation, but it's really intended to allow us to help navigate the conversation and bring in some resources and such. But our audience is truly the subject matter experts of our lives, our communities, our bodies, our experiences. So we really want you to engage as much as possible and help drive this episode and all of our episodes. So please do feel comfortable to engage and put in your comments. Let us know if you have a question or if there are things that you want us to uplift that you don't feel we shined as much light on. So just hang in there, maybe about a minute or so before we get started. And as you're joining, I see some folks joining. I just gave everyone an introduction about today, but we're going to allow maybe about 30 more seconds or so for people to come into our live discussion, and then we'll get going. We'll start with the introduction of our panelists and then the introduction of what we'll be discussing today and get really deep into the conversation. We encourage you to engage in that chat box. This is a live discussion, so all of your comments will be answered live. And if we can't get to something within the hour time we have allotted, please keep your comments there. We can easily message you back on YouTube after this, or at the end of our episode, you'll have a means to contact us. We'll give our handles on social media. So if you want to reach out to us individually or at OurPanel TV to ask general questions, please do. Oh, and if you know somebody that would fit really well as a guest, or, if you yourself want to be a guest and feel that you have something to that you particularly want to uplift into this platform, please do let us know. Hit us up at OurPanel TV. Wonderful. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started so that way we have as much time as possible to get into our dialogue and our questions here. So welcome to our panel. This is our first episode of season 3. Yes, season 3. We started in 2019, believe it or not. 2020 was a blur for everybody. And then now we're in 2021, hitting off of our series of our first episode of season 3. So thank you so much for coming along with us through this experience. We're so excited to have you. I'm Dr. Crystal Redmond, one of the panelists and creator of our panel. You can follow us at OurPanel TV on Instagram. And I'm joined here, and I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves because, again, this is our first episode of season 3. So I'm joined here by my 2 co-panelists, Dr. Rose and Dr. Q. And today we have a special gem. We have a special guest with us, Dr. India Hall, that's joining us too as well. So we'll let everyone go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. India Rose, and just a little bit about my background. My doctorate is in public health, and I serve on a COVID mitigation project for CDC.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiana Llewellyn. I have a doctorate in physical therapy. I own Body Goals Physical Therapy and Wellness, located in the Metro Atlanta area, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. India Hall. I'm super thankful to be here on Our Panel TV talk show. I just wanted to let you all know that my doctorate is in organizational leadership, and that is with an emphasis in Christian ministries. It is a doctorate of education, so I do own a virtual school, and I am also a certified life coach where I help people navigate different life skills while also addressing anything related to criminal justice and police reform.
Yes, Dr. Hall, you better go ahead and uplift that virtual school. Which reminds me, our panel was created specifically to give a platform to highlight Black and Brown folks, Indigenous folks, and really just uplift our experiences, our lives, our communities, our issues. And one of the reasons why we decided on a panel of individuals versus just one host is because we wanted to uplift some of that diversity within our own backgrounds and our own experiences, specifically making sure to center like Black femmes and Black women within this panel. So I'm super excited to have you on and all of the brilliance you bring to this conversation. There's not very many panels like this. I would say there's none, but I don't know what exists all in the world right now. But I will say that, there's not very many spaces that are specifically carved out by us that allows us to control our narrative around our lives and our experiences. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much to our other panelists for just like being dope and bringing all that knowledge to our conversation. So let's just jump right in. So today, our first episode of season 3 is a 2-part discussion. First, we're going to give you some quick, easy updates around COVID-19 and vaccinations, some things that our community should know, consider when making a plan, or as you're navigating through your plan. Dr. Rose and Dr. Q would specifically be uplifting some of those things there. And then that's going to be a quick snapshot. And then the latter part of the conversation, which is the bulk of the conversation, and one of the reasons why we invited Dr. Hall into this space today is to really go through the discussion around our fight for liberation and how we balance self-care, really uplifting the dynamic between how we navigate grief and sorrow at the same time of upholding and honoring happiness and joy, and what that potentially can look like as we're navigating our lives, especially, throughout all the things that are going on politically as well as socially and even personally. So thank you again for joining in. If y'all have questions as we're going through the conversation or have just comments, please drop them in the box. This is a live discussion, so we'll get to those lives. But yeah, Dr. Rose and Dr. Q, please hit us with some COVID-19 updates and vaccination updates.
Sure, Dr. Redmond. All right, so we have been having this discussion for over a year now. And as we know, this pandemic started in 2019, hence the name COVID-19, but really became at the forefront in 2020. And so to date, 573,000 people have died from COVID in our country, and 32 million people have tested positive for COVID. And this is something that I cannot stress enough. Even if you're vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask. You still need to be safe. And I know recently as in yesterday, CDC actually have lifted some of their mask restrictions for those that are fully vaccinated, but you still need to wear a mask. I cannot stress this enough to communities, especially communities of color. Black and brown people are still those that are hospitalized and die at a rate much quicker than our white counterparts. And so this pandemic is still alive and well. I cannot stress that enough to people. One thing that I think is really important for us to note is that there has been an increase in the number of COVID cases among young adults. And so college age students, ages 18 to 30, they're seeing a spike in the number of COVID cases because of the variants that have been introduced here in the United States. And so it's really, really important for folks to continue to protect themselves. I know it's starting to get warm in certain parts of the country and folks like to be out, go to the club, go to restaurants, but it's really, really important that if you are going into these environments where there are large crowds, that you continue to wear your mask and social distance when you can. One thing I do want to share is vaccinations are a personal choice. We're not here to stress that you need to get vaccinated. I actually looked at our episode from last year where I said I wasn't going to be a guinea pig. And guess who got vaccinated? Me. So I got vaccinated because 573,000 people couldn't. And that's just being completely honest. I have parents that are older. I have loved ones that I care about. And I got vaccinated to protect the next man and woman. That's the honest goodness truth. As you know, I've traveled this entire pandemic, and I really feel like vaccinations will help slow the curve, but it's a personal choice. I will not tell you what to do, but I do say it's something that you should consider. One thing that we need to understand is that just because you're vaccinated, it does not mean that you are protected against COVID-19. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get it. But what it does mean is that your chances of hospitalization and long-term health outcomes will be reduced tremendously because you are vaccinated. And so I know a lot of people think like, oh, I'm vaccinated, that means I don't need to wear a mask. That means I can be in large crowds. That's not what it means. It means that if you do get COVID, which you will still be able to, even with the vaccine, it will reduce your chances of hospitalization and long-term health outcomes. So I'm trying to think what else I can share. That's really it in a nutshell. I know there's a lot of hesitancy around vaccinations because of our distrust of the healthcare system and our community especially. But I really want to urge you, do your own research and make the choice that's best for you and your family.
Yes, I do agree with Dr. India. I personally work directly with patients of all age groups, from pediatrics to up to 90-year-olds, geriatrics, all demographics, from Black and Brown communities to Caucasian communities. So I myself, also being a healthcare provider, decided to get vaccinated to protect myself and also to protect my patients. I've come into contact with a couple people who had COVID-19, and luckily I did test negative after I did. I always wear a mask and my patients wear masks, but with my occupation, I have to actually touch a person and be less than 6 feet from the patient. So I do emphasize hand washing as much as possible, still and always. I think we should always wash our hands beyond COVID-19. That's just something that I'm just gonna really just do. Hand sanitizers as well. And I would like to emphasize, I have a lot of high school patients, and really I have also patients that work at the hospital, and those numbers are still up high for that 18 to 30-year-old community. Like Dr. India said, it is getting warmer outside, and everyone's just tired and everyone wants to travel. Just try your best to distance as much as possible, and just hang in there, work on the self-care, work on everything that you can, and hopefully we could just get through. Dr. India, didn't you say like the curve is plateauing, bending down, or what is it looking like?
Yeah, so we need to get to 75 to 85%, which is considered herd immunity. And herd immunity is basically when a certain percentage of the population has been vaccinated to where it will be safe enough for us to go out without masks. We are right now at 29.5%. So we are very far from that 75%. And what they're seeing is that there was a huge rush for vaccinations in the beginning when they were first rolled out in December, but now it's starting to decline. And so across our country, mass vaccination sites are actually closing. I know here in the state of Georgia, our mass vaccination sites are now completely closed because that huge rush for vaccinations has since dramatically decreased. And so we have a long way to go. I am not going to sugarcoat it. We are at 29.5%. We need to get to 75% of the entire United States population to get vaccinated until we get to herd immunity. But once we're there, that's when a lot of the restrictions will be lifted. That's when people can see our beautiful teeth and our lipstick. That's when we'll be able to like see each other's smiles again, because we won't have to wear a mask at that point, because majority of the population will be vaccinated. So the likelihood of coming in contact with someone with COVID will be reduced dramatically. But again, that hesitancy around vaccinations is really causing some huge declines and delays in that progress towards herd immunity.
I'm just thinking, listen, even if we get to 75% herd immunity, I'm still wearing my mask. This is going to be a part of my wardrobe for a very long time. I just ain't going to breathe this air like I used to. And a part of our past conversations, we spoke about our history, Black folks' history with, state public health officials and experimentations on our bodies and, history and current, experiences and the very real fear and lack of trust that we as a community have with the healthcare and medicine industry. Holding that, those truths and honoring that. And one of the things we said at our closing last episode of season 2 was, it's up to you to make your plan. You said it here, Dr. Rose, only you know what's right for you and your family and those around you. And if in your plan includes a vaccination, then these are some of the pieces you need to be aware of, that Dr. Rose and Dr. Q had uplifted around, still making sure you have the other pieces of your plan too as well, making sure that you are still, following up on your hygiene and such and wearing your mask and things of that nature and staying distant and et cetera. And if this is not a part of your plan, I would encourage you to really speak to those within your local community or within your family as to what does that look like for your household, for your close knit group, and for yourself, and what are the things that are within that plan. So just being very real with holding those truths. And also one thing that I distinctly remember that Dr. Rose said in our last episode was and if your plan is maybe not right now to get vaccinated, then what do you need to know? What information do you need in order to, shift that decision? If that's something that you're on the fence with, do you need to see more people around you get vaccinated? Do you need to see what, the outcomes potentially could be in 3 months, 6 months, or what does that look like? And as Dr. Rose said, our last episode was we ain't going to guinea pig and such. And listen, those feelings are still there a little bit for myself, and, I am still in the decision-making process. And it's, versus in December, I was we're in April and I'm okay, I think our family is shifting a little bit more and maybe adding that to our plan. So, we say that to say that, hold both your truth, your experiences, and what ultimately is your goal with this, as well as just the health of, overall community and such. And then I think the last thing I'll just uplift in that piece of the conversation is, we had a conversation behind the scenes around, we're in Georgia for the most part. Our panel is in Georgia, I'll say. And, a lot of the HBCUs are requiring vaccinations as students come into this next school year. And we remember, without dating us, I was in my medical program when H1N1 was going on. And I remember I was well into maybe my second year, again, not dating nothing. I was well into my second year when I couldn't register for my next semester. I couldn't receive, financial aid or anything like that unless I got vaccinated for H1N1. And I remember just thinking, wait a minute, this wasn't a stipulation of my, conditions for enrollment a year ago. And I remember organizing some of my other students, or not my students, but some of my other colleagues and such, and other students within the university, and trying to get signatures and things of that nature. But ultimately, I got vaccinated. And, that struggle between making sure that you can uphold your own self-determination, bodily autonomy, and your choices with holding the truth of, our histories and our experiences with, having to make this very real decision. That's something you would just have to balance and consider as you're making your plan.
And just to add to that, I think one thing that's really important, I do not support requiring students to do anything that relates to their body. However, a university setting is a setting in which students are in close proximity. And with the rate of young people getting COVID, I feel like these universities are doing what they think is going to be best to protect these young people. As I shared, 18 to 30, that's the age range, and really college age, they're seeing a huge spike in the number of hospitalizations. And I don't have the data right now, but some of these young people are actually losing their fight to COVID. And so I think when you weigh the risk and the reward, you have to do what's best for you. But for some of the college campuses, I feel like they are really doing what they feel is best. And again, that is a personal choice, not telling you to withdraw from class, but if you don't support that, you don't have to go to that school. You really do not. But having a plan in place is going to be really, really important, and just being informed. There is so much misinformation out there. I cannot even stress this enough. I have seen so many conspiracy theories. And I mean, who knows? Some of the stuff may be true, but I heard things like a woman's menstrual cycle changes because of the COVID vaccine. Does it? I mean, I haven't seen data to back it up, and I am a true scientist. So numbers don't lie. I need to see the data. I need to see the information to give my own justification and confirm whether or not this information is true. I heard about something with some sort of like something radiates from people that are pregnant and have the COVID-19 vaccine. Again, I'm like, that sounds really crazy, but some people actually believe this. A lot of people actually. There is a situation going on right now at a private school in Miami where if you are vaccinated, you are going to lose your job. So this school wants to be medically free. They don't want to impose anything on anyone or their body. And so the dean of that school is actually laying off people that get vaccinated for COVID because of some of these claims about this radiation and this omission that's coming off of people and different things that she's heard. And that's her personal choice. It's her school. And then when it's yours, you can do what you want. But again, it's really, really important for folks to be informed, do your own research, and then do what's best for you and your family.
I totally agree. And just like people are anti-vaccinations, there are still anti-mask people that I have to deal with daily. And I'm still going to uplift standards of care in my clinic. So you just have to make the best decision for yourself, for your family, whoever you're coming in direct contact with. And also, I agree with Dr. India. The colleges are making the best decision that they can make because the HBCUs are predominantly African-American, which have pre-existing conditions. Even the professors are probably of a certain age and the college students. So like she said, I don't know if they have the options of virtual or they have to be all in person, or maybe you have to withdraw, but you still have some sort of decision. I'm like you, Dr. Crystal, I had to take the H1N1 back. I was in grad school too, but I decided to take it because I wanted to get through this degree. I was already in debt with the graduate tuition. So it's ultimately your decision. I made the decision. I tell people, do not shame anyone who decides not to take a vaccination versus someone who decides to. But I still have to fight with people about these masks. It's hilarious to me how many people I still fight about masks.
Listen, well, thank you too for that segment of the conversation. And, we will be missing something if we didn't, hold up two parts of this conversation. We thought it was very important to give these very important updates around COVID-19 because we're still in a pandemic. It's very clear we're still here, right? And as it pertains to just us as Black folks and our experiences with COVID, wanted to make sure we did that. But also the other, thing that we constantly live in is, the very real reality that our lives are threatened every day and taken every day. I won't say increased killing, but the increased media amplification of the killings of Black and brown folks. And most recently, several different, not even most recently, because unfortunately, this is something that goes on, just more exposure, more camera footage on it. But just really taking a moment to just breathe in this moment with just all that we're navigating and the lives that continually are taking from us by state-sanctioned violence. And one of the reasons why we wanted to bring in our guest, Dr. Hall, who definitely has uplifted conversations around how do we really hold that, and understanding that justice is not defined by the state. So I wanted to bring Dr. Hall into this conversation just to speak some more on how not necessarily like how do we obtain justice, because I think that that is like a strategy, but more so your thoughts around state sanctioned violence and what are the next steps within community to really hold our power.
Thank you so much for that question. I think the first thing is obviously unifying together as a community, and also being open to those who are maybe not necessarily in Black and brown communities, but are wanting to team up with us and also help us move forward. And the reason why that's important and that's critical is because if we're being honest, it'd be a hard feat to do on our own. We have to be able to have allies, and we have to be able to move forward, but with effectiveness and with a strategy. So essentially what's going on around us is out of our control, obviously, in a major way. We're watching Black and brown bodies being brutalized and being killed unjustly and at a rapid pace. And though we've been experiencing this as a country, as this has been an ongoing systemic problem and a stain in our nation, it is now being highlighted in such a way in which we can see it on cameras, which makes it that much more traumatic. In the past, we've had access to news articles, and we've had access to what the news wanted us to know, what the news wanted us to see, what they allowed us to have access to. And now with iPhones, and every citizen, every American citizen who is present on the scene pulls out their phone and starts to record, we are now seeing the entirety or most of the situation, and how brutal we really have been encountering these people in high positions of authority and positions that seem to be obviously, actually outrightly so, abusing their positions of authority. Okay, so using whatever internal racial experiences that they're having and hate that they're having, and getting away with executing that racial hate towards Black and brown bodies in society. Us now as a community, all of us as a community, having to watch it and see our fellow brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, best friends, significant others being killed unjustly so at that is that much more traumatic, which then puts us in a position of need for extra care and caution with our mental health, extra care and consideration with our well-being, and extra care and consideration with that of our peers, everyone around us. We are truly in a state where we are needing to make changes. It's not enough to talk about. It needs to now be an active upward progression in dismantling these highly disruptive systems that have been oppressing Black and brown bodies for quite some time now.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. And, we've had conversations, I've said in past episodes before that I'm an abolitionist. And I think that as folks are more aware of some of the on the ground work that is being done by organizers that have historically done this work to really dismantle and abolish these systems of oppression. And, some folks kind of get stop and think like abolitionists, what do you mean abolish, And I challenge folks to think about have we ever had an opportunity to really just be able to create the systems or communities that will support us, provide the care we need? And not to say that there's not going to be bad, people doing bad things and things of that nature, but have we ever been able as a community to design what that looks like? What accountability looks like for those folks, what accountability looks like throughout our communities? And the answer is no, and thinking about the history of prisons and the prison industrial complex and jail industrial complex, and thinking about the history of police and such, we know that these systems were created not for us, actually for us to as slave catchers, and to make sure that, we stay compliant and stayed in line, and to literally kill us. And, throughout the years, it has developed into what it is today, with that same kind of rooting of this genocide, so to speak, and the mass killing of our people. And there's this, I'm interested because there's been this new conversation of this isn't justice, this is just accountability. And folks are actually starting to use some of that language which is good. And also like just challenging our communities to really envision and think about abolition. And I'll say I had a conversation with someone I grew up with. He actually messaged me on Instagram and said like, well, I still, a military person said, I really still think that, we need police, because without police, what happens is the people with the most power within our communities, like the bigger people and things of that nature, will take over. And I had to stop and kind of like sit in that, and there's a lot of things going through my head. But, I said, let me call him in a little bit, let me call him in. And I was like, well, have you ever had a chance to really envision what communities and the systems we create could really look like? I started with, I strongly disagree, and went into some points and said, I encourage you and sent them a few links and such, just to look into these things. And I think that as we're holding the very real experiences that we're having, I think we should, and as we start to get involved really within like the organizing and the shifting of power piece, I think us as a community should really ask ourselves, are we fighting for transformative justice and really truly like abolishing and dismantling these systems? Or are we just okay with like, we just want to make it better. Like, just don't kill us as much, like, what are we really fighting for? And I think that once we have a collective strategy and some alignment, at least for like what our liberation could potentially look like, then we will have a stronger strategy for like getting there. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that that ideology and that thought process of abolition and being able to abolish some of these long-standing systems that have been in place to oppress Black and brown people. I mean, when we look at our prison systems, they're overpopulated, and they're overpopulated by what? Black and brown bodies. When we look at those who have been killed by police and though unlawfully, these police officers keep getting off, except for our most recent case with George Floyd here. They are in place, and they are doing these things against Black and brown bodies historically for so long. And when it comes to now this narrative of, should we just defund them? That is one step, right? That would be one step, but then it would have to be a collective agreement of they need to not exist. And I feel like that would be something that we would really need to educate our communities about. And the reason why they're having a hard time envisioning a world or our society without police is because the narrative isn't being given enough. I don't think there's enough talk about, hey, what if they didn't exist? What would be in place then? What would work in place of these police officers existing? If we do not have them in place, okay, what could we do then? What would be effective in managing crime, or what would be effective in managing when there's some type of experience that's occurring in society that would need some type of enforcement? What would that look like? If we took it to the drawing board and began to discuss it and paint the picture for our community, then I feel like they would have a little bit more conversations and narrative about it. But if it's not being spoken about enough and we're simply saying defund the police, the only vision that we're going after is to take money away from these powerful structures and these people. So I think it's a matter of, do we want to take baby steps towards abolition? Do we want to take baby steps? Let's defund them. Okay, now let's take this away. Now let's just get rid of them altogether. Or do we want to come up with a vision that people can buy into and genuinely believe and stand by and stand up for and say, let's just get rid of them altogether? But I feel like when we come to have these conversations and educate our community about getting rid of the police officers or defunding the police, whatever it is that we're deciding to do, we have to come organized, and we have to come prepared with what can be in place of, and we have to be able to explain that so clearly that there is no really question or area for ambiguity about how it would be effective. I think it just takes a matter of strong, forceful people with a voice to say, this is what we want to do and this is what we can do. I want you to know that this could be effective for X, Y, and Z reasons. And once they can see that, once they can really envision that, and someone can stand by that strongly, people will stand by that as well. It has to be a matter of conversation.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Hall. And I think one of the important things here is that it's not the system. The root cause of this is racism and anti-Black discrimination and oppression. I feel like the system is set up against us. And so it's really addressing the root cause. Like, why do police officers and people that are not people of color, why do they feel threatened by Black and brown people? What is causing you to feel threatened when a Black or brown person is in your presence? When a Black or brown person is walking down the street, regardless of what we wear. I mean, I constantly always think back to Trayvon Martin. I have a little brother myself. A hoodie, that shouldn't be threatening. You know, what we wear shouldn't be threatening. And so I think it's going to take a lot of work, but we need to really address the root cause, which is racism at the end of the day. And this is something that for the first time in CDC's existence that they have elevated and actually released a statement about racism being a public health threat. It is literally impacting the health of Black and brown people across our country. And then when you add, you know, these unjust killings of Black and brown people, it only magnifies it more. But like you said, this isn't new information. This is just now newly publicized information. There are so many police killings that have not been televised. The fact that we have to, this device here, this protects us. This protects us. I think about Walter Scott. That officer would have gotten off if that young guy did not have a cell phone to show, hey, he actually shot him in the back when he was fleeing, not the other way around. And so I think it's really unfortunate that we have to rely on things such as videotape, but even in the Derek Chauvin trial, that videotape was critical. And I feel like it's really going to take just a concerted effort from our community to start the conversation. But we also have to make sure that the people that are inflicting this upon our community is a part of that conversation as well.
Yeah. And I see you, Mugabe X. I'm going to uplift your question in a second. Just responding that. So I want to make some distinctions here. You know, Dr. Rose said we have a lot of work to do. I'm going to say it. We don't got no work to do. It's white folks that got all the work to do. Like, our job isn't to educate the oppressor, right? Like, I'm not in the business of educating white folks on how they can show up better, be anti-racist or anything like that. I don't get paid to do that. There's no reparations in that. That is not my labor to hold, right? Like, white folks need to hold that labor down, you know? And, you know, it's not enough to say I'm not racist, but are you actively anti-racist in all that you do? In everything you do, from work to home life, to what you say, how you process things, how you stand up for people in your actions, etc., in your resources? Are you reallocating resources to communities of color, BIPOC communities? Are you decentering yourself? You know, sometimes people have a hard time decentering themselves. It's because historically you're very used to the privilege of you being at the center and being at the center of power, right? So like, how are you challenging yourself to decenter yourself, and et cetera, right? So that's work that white folks need to do. To galvanize their communities, have a strategy for being anti-racist, et cetera, right? And the other part I want to say is, like, within, you know, these systems, as you said, Dr. Rose, they are rooted in racism, rooted in oppression, right? And what do we do with plants that ain't good? You pull up the root, right? That's what the hell I'm saying. Let's pull this shit up. Like, these systems got to go, you know? And, you know, as we were saying, and as Dr. Hall was saying, is like, you know, we haven't had the opportunity or the time or the luxury or the, you know, just at all. Cause, you know, we're constantly up against something. You know, we got the verdict of George Floyd, then a child was killed. Like, you know, so like, we're constantly having to be reactive versus proactive. We're constantly having to, you know, fight these battles and input. Okay, let's talk about liberation here. Let's talk about this here. Let's talk about, you know, abolishing these systems here. When we haven't had the luxury to just be like, all right, you know, what does this look like collectively for our communities to truly dismantle and abolish these systems and really uplift our liberation, like our ability to be resourced, to thrive, to survive, like all these different things, right? And I don't know if Dr. Hall, you had something to say. I didn't know if you.
So Dr. Rose and Dr. Redmond, I wanted to mention something. You both mentioned the root of the problem being racism. And I love that you said root. I love that you said root, because if we go back to the basis and we go back to the foundation of where this started, we start with the transatlantic slave trade. But I want to let you know something, and I'm sure this has all been spoken about before. What's interesting to me is that when they brought Africans over, what they believed needed to be handled in agriculture could only be done by Africans, because they were not only more knowledgeable about the agriculture and the land, but their bodies were more resilient in times where there were sicknesses, certain diseases, and even in the climate, the weather, their bodies were more resilient. And they were less likely to get sick, and they were considered stronger. So the oppressor chose the stronger choice to do the labor and to do the work. But if you go even deeper, and not to make a Christian discussion, but if you go even deeper to biblical times, the Israelites were oppressed not because of anything pertaining to strength, but because of their number. There were too many of them, and the Egyptians feared that. So now when you look at Blacks in the same way, there are so many of us. And I think that because we are powerful and we are also feared. And the other aspect of it is when we have been oppressed for years and years and years and still can come out and be doctors and still can come out and be lawyers and still can come out and be entrepreneurs and business owners and game changers and world changers, that is saying a lot. See, oppressors only oppress what they fear. And I think that is what we have to know, is that we hold the power. The only reason why they feel that they can continually attack us this way, it's not that we're not valuable. It's not that we don't matter. It's because we matter so much to them that they fear us. And that's the truth of the matter. And I truly believe that they've been attacking Black and brown bodies because they're afraid of the power that we'll have. And in this country, when you look at the strides we've made, even in the fact that we were oppressed and our ancestors were held down, and technically we are owed hundreds of years of reparations, and we still seem to make it out, and we still seem to shine and still seem to flourish in our communities and in our society. We are resilient, we are strong, we are powerful, and they fear us for it. That's the bottom line.
Yes, a word, Dr. Hall. Yes. We got some snaps and some claps on the comment. So we have a few comments from Mugabe, which I'll uplift. And Stephanie, I see your comment too as well. We'll probably address it towards the end when we do a recap. But Mugabe says a few things. One, let's destroy the system. So I think we kind of discuss what we need to do to kind of get there, and like a collective strategy for abolition, and what we can do, as Dr. Hall said, the chipping away of, as we get there and such, right? And then Mugabe also mentioned, I am not aware of any brown people fighting for Black people. I think it's important to have a pro-Black agenda. So what I will say is that when I me particularly, when I speak of racism, I'm specifically speaking about anti-Black racism, because I think anti-Black racism, unfortunately, is like the umbrella and the blueprint for how other racism and systems of racism exist, like, just like anti-Asian racism, anti-brown racism, like all of these things. But anti-Black racism has been the blueprint for this country, internationally too as well. So I think that whatever agenda that we take as a collective community needs to be pro-Black, period, right? In order to dismantle racism, anti-Black racism, and how it affects the racism of other folks, we have to have a very pro-Black, very specific anti-racist agenda and lens, right? And strategy. And that's the only way we are going to do the work to truly achieve liberation and justice for our communities, right? And specifically, when I speak of centering Black folks, yes, those are our identities, but also I speak of folks that have the furthest relationships to power, right? Disabled folks, queer folks, like just folks within a complex of different identities that have that reside deep within those margins, right? And I don't speak about hierarchy of oppression and systems. So there's no hierarchy of oppression. Folks, Black folks, brown folks are oppressed, right? And in this country, Black folks, because of that staple of anti-Black racism, we see those oppressions lived out within all these different systems: education system, healthcare system, all these different systems within our social society, our cultural norms, our political society, et cetera, right? And we are the blueprint for these policies that are against folks within those margins, these policies that are against folks within the furthest proximities to power. So that's what I'll say about that. I don't know if other folks have anything to add to the comment.
Y'all, I want to turn off my alarm really quick because I can't speak. So I didn't want to just walk off. So I'm going to turn my camera off and I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
No worries, Dr. Q. Listen, we're in COVID. We're at home. This is life. I think my little one was crying upstairs, but is asleep now. So I don't know if, thank you, Mugabe, and thank you, Stephanie and Aaron and Myron. Really appreciate y'all's support on that. And I don't know if Dr. Hall or Dr. Rose wanted to add something to that comment.
I do. So now I just lost my whole train of thought with the alarm. the alarm going off. I think it's important what you said, Mugabe, about a pro-Black agenda. But we are powerful in numbers, and it's more than just our community. Like, brown people are also oppressed. And so one thing I know, like when we talk about racism, like Dr. Redmond said, we are talking about anti-Black racism. But when we talk about things that impact our community, it's impacting both Black and brown people, or Indigenous, or people with disabilities, or queer folks, like Dr. Redmond said. And so I'm totally with you. Like, I'm all for uplifting our community, but I think collectively we could do something together, because when you think about it, when you put the two minority populations together, they actually make up the majority in the country. And so right now we may be the farthest from power, but collectively, if we come together, when you talk about statistics, African Americans only make up 13% of the United States population. But when you pair us with another community that is also oppressed, then there's power in numbers. And so I definitely support a pro-Black agenda, but I feel like collectively, people of color, Black and brown people, Indigenous people, together, we can do something great, because we're all oppressed. These systems are all set up against us. And so it really will take dismantling these systems that weren't designed for us in the first place.
Dr. Rose, I really appreciate that. That's exactly what I was thinking. And that's partially one of the comments when I mentioned earlier was that we need to unite. It's good to have allies. It's good to have people, even if they don't thoroughly understand the experience, if they can just team up and say, but you know what, I get that this is so important and we really do need to make these major changes in this society. So it's the allies. It's once again, it's that power in numbers that truly does matter. And it would be great, right, if every Black person was on board, but it would be even better if we had more people on board with every Black person on board. Once again, like you said, it's the power in numbers, and allies is extremely important. Being able to unite with people who are willing to push the initiative so that we can make real change.
I'm a big advocate in using your platform wherever you may work, what kind of career you have. I know it's hard to abolish everything in one day, but if you could just stand up for certain things, little things go a longer way than not doing anything at all. So I try my best within my field and outside of my scope of practice to stand up for these communities, and not just with criminal reform and all these Black killings, but also we'll go into a whole nother episode with healthcare disparities. We've talked about that before, but just using whatever platform you have in life to just stand up or to make some sort of difference goes a long way.
Absolutely. And, just naming that, one of the things we spoke about before is like, thinking about the roots of these systems, including, police and prisons and things of that nature. There's this conversation of like reform versus like abolish, or, restorative justice versus transformative justice. And, one thing I'll uplift is like restorative justice assumes that we want to restore it to its origins. We want to or fix it or make it function better. Transformative justice allows us to reimagine and envision exactly what we want this system or this thing to be, right? Which is in line with abolitionists, right? Like abolishing systems and such. And so I just want to make that clear in this conversation, wherever you're at in, your piece of like organizing or your process of liberation, or just being involved with some of this like on the ground work. I really encourage you to plug into some local, wherever you're at in the world, grassroots organizations that do grassroots organizing, mobilizing, base building, civic engagement, like do all of these things specifically around like shifting power, building power within communities, and et cetera. Especially an organization that is like truly on the ground doing this work and doing some actions and such, because I do think it's important to like advance our own political education and things. I come from a family where everybody has differences of opinions, and some of maybe the older folks in my family don't truly understand the lens of abolition. They're like, well, police just need to stop killing us. I'm like, let me call you in. Let's have a conversation, right? So, before earlier in the conversation, I said, I'm not paid to educate white folks, right? I will say for my folks, my community, my family, if it's a call-in moment where we need to have some political education, I can point you to some resources. I still can expand on my lens and should have some political education too. Like if there are pieces, I want folks to be able to come along to this journey, right, in our liberation and not feel left behind because they don't understand the strategy, the collective strategy, right? So reach out to us, reach out to local organizations, just get plugged in and try to expand upon your education, your political education in these moments. So I'll definitely say that. Thank you, Mugabe. And then, so the other piece of this conversation, as you know, we're in our last 10 minutes, please drop in some comments and such, things that you feel you want us to uplift. We'll answer them on the air. But is this truly balancing of our fight for liberation and self-care? Last season, we had an episode on radical rest and leisure and self-care. And we really dived deep into that because we really needed to pause and take a breath and just really, just be, right? And really thinking about care as a strategy for resistance and a strategy for our liberation. And in that conversation, as it pertains to today, we really want to uplift how do we continue to hold both and, right? Like one, we are living in some really wild times, right? With everything we're navigating, COVID-19, anti-Black racism, and how that affects us in our day-to-day lives from the time we open up our social media platforms and we see something, how it bears on us and is carried on our backs as we have to carry on with business as usual and, log into work and do all these things and be a parent or what have you, right? So we have that very real, the navigating of like trauma, grief, loss, in addition to like what we're going through personally, right? As well as like celebrating happiness and joys in that small moments of like, just being around people you love, or even just, as folks were raffling with the fact that we got the verdict from the Derek, trial, whatever, for the murder of George Floyd. And folks were like, I feel like I have this piece of joy. And then also, for accountability. And then also, this little girl got murdered, her life taken away within seconds after this verdict. So how do I hold both, this and that? And, that's a true question, because we have been conditioned as Black folks to compartmentalize our grief, our sorrow, our trauma, our joy, etc. So we can't literally survive. Like that is a survival strategy that we have mastered, how we compartmentalize those things, right? So I think in this space, we should have a deeper conversation of like what that could potentially look like to be able to hold both truths, and I think the last thing I'll say, and I'll open up to the floor, is that, at the beginning of this year, I got married. So hence the hyphenated Redmond Lewis, you see that? So Dr. Redmond Lewis, I got married, and my co-panelists know that I lost my grandmother the morning of my wedding. She was at the wedding, and that was something that wasn't distant. That was, immediate, this is my grandmother. And, having to literally compartmentalize, in that moment, as a strategy for my survival, right? And the survival of my family and such, and being able to, as I moved through that day and the months afterwards, this happened in January, having to literally check in with myself and say, okay, it is okay to feel sorrow and sadness and break down because of this tremendous loss to myself and my family, and also still hold that I'm happy that, me and my partner, said I do, and we're walking into this next chapter of my life, and not having guilt about holding that happiness, because both can exist at the same time, and how we transfer those personal balances with our complete fight for liberation. It is okay that we are fighting for liberation and holding all this trauma and holding all the, the truths of what our lives are as Black folks in our society, and also celebrating the fact that, we're able to like have these small wins, or we're able to laugh and, be outside, maybe in front of your homes and just, smell the flowers. I don't know. But, so what does that potentially look like, y'all?
I think it's a matter of authenticity, being authentic in your in your reality and the experience that you're having with your realities. So if it's a cluster of emotions, because there's both happy and sad things occurring at the same time, allowing yourself to feel and be unapologetic with what feeling you're currently, what's surfacing for you in that moment, and allow yourself to authentically experience that. And if you need to talk that out. If you need to cry that out, cry that out. If you need to laugh and then cry 2 seconds later, or cry and then laugh 2 seconds later, whatever it is that you need to do, allow yourself the freedom to be authentic in your natural experience and reactions and emotions to the things that are occurring around you. Life can be hard. I mean, look at everything that's going on around us. We were never meant to be robots. Since birth, we were born crying, right? And you have to think about that. It's a natural human reaction and response to life. It's okay to need to bow your head and cry for a little bit, and then if you got a smile, if you got a smile within your heart and you want to let it out, let that out. But whatever it is that you're feeling, you're allowed to feel that, and be unapologetic about that. Be authentic with yourself about that. And of course, as I would always say, and I advocate for, get therapy or get help, get somebody that you can trust and talk to that may be licensed and has been in that field and as a professional in that field. And as Blacks, I believe it's important to get those that are already aligned with your experience. So Black therapists, there are quite a bit of them. And there's a lot of programs right now being highlighted and pushed all over social media and news platforms that let you know there are Black therapists in your areas that you can contact and connect with. Because if we're being authentic and honest, they're going to understand a lot more, right? They're even in their own personal lives and experiences, they're identifying with the same exact thing. So I always say, be authentic, allow yourself to feel what you feel, and work through those emotions at the pace that you need to. Do not rush yourself, and be unapologetic. If you need to take a day off because mentally it's exhausting and emotionally it's draining, please allow yourself to treat that as a regular sick day. If I mentally am drained, I have the flu today. In my mind has the flu. So I'm calling you and telling you that I am sick today, okay? I have the flu today. I need to take care of my mind. I need to make sure my mental health is secured and is okay so that I can really be my best self and operate at my highest version. But I'm not going to apologize for needing to take time away from my obligations and responsibilities to maintain my mental health, specifically when we're going through so much as a society.
I also agree with that. Within this almost a year and a half, I've been acknowledging my triggers, and like Dr. Hall say, taking days off. Normally I'm a hustler and I'll keep going, but acknowledging when I need to pull myself back from even people, family, and or social media, or just from work. So I'm always feel like I'm a strong person and I have to suppress some feelings. So that goes with hardening myself, our history of being Black people. So I've learned that a lot, even from our mental health episodes, just to acknowledge things, talk things out with other people, and being open about my situations that I've been going through.
And just to add to that, I know we have 2 minutes. I always tell people you don't need permission to do what's best for you. So it's your life, it's your body, it's your mind. And this idea of compartmentalizing, especially in corporate America, being in corporate America, I see it so often. So that could be a topic for another day. Just be your authentic self, like Dr. Hall said, and you don't need permission to do what's best for you.
Absolutely. And I will say, as a person who runs different organizations, one organization that I run actually in Atlanta, Georgia, I will encourage anybody to plug in because we actually do some of that grassroots mobilizing work and civic engagement, is Spark Reproductive Justice Now. Our organization is Black. So, Black executive, Black staff, Black board, etc. Right? So when these moments come up, we call them radical rest days or weeks. Sometimes I'll just be like, listen, y'all, how y'all feeling? Let's pause, right? Whatever we got to do, whatever resources it takes, let's just pause and step away from work, right? Other organizations or other clients I may have might not be a Black organization. So I have to actually say, listen, we're pausing, and these, and these are the reasons why, and this should be a part of our strategy and our process moving forward in our policies, procedures, and protocols. So I encourage folks, if you are in these positions within organizations, that you can begin to integrate some of those things. Yes, please do that. If you are a decision maker within your organization and you can allow for these things to be integrated in your policies, please do them. And if you're not able to do so, then as Dr. Hall said, if you have the ability and the resources to do so, being exhausted is being, your mind is exhausted, your emotions are exhausted, and you need to take a step back, so check in with yourselves. So,
Dr. Lewis, let me answer Stephanie's question really quick. So she says, can y'all speak on if things go south from the vaccine, that no liability is required on the companies that manufacture it? That is absolutely true. No liability whatsoever. And this has always been the case, even with the flu shot. So if you choose to get vaccinated, you're doing it at your own risk, and the company that manufactured it is not responsible for anything that happens.
Yes. So real quick, with the few seconds we have left, Dr. Hall, if you want to tell us how to stay connected with you, and same for Dr. Rose and Dr. Q.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'm mostly on Instagram at Dr. India Hall, and just Dr. India Hall. And then I also have my website, drindiahall.com. And if you're looking to check out any virtual courses on maintaining your peace, anything related to mental health, whether that's relationships, healing from past hurts, that would be drindiahallschool.com. So that would be my virtual school where you can take courses on those topic areas. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Dr. Kiana, but you can find my company, Body Goals Physical Therapy, body_goals_ATL, and we do a lot of stretching and mobility stuff that will help if you're working from home, and also help with tension and self-care and mobility and overall wellness. So it's bodygoalschallenge.com.
And I can be found on Instagram. It's Dr._India.
Awesome. And you can find me on Instagram as well at Dr. Crystal Redmond, spell out Dr., spell out Crystal with a K, spell out Redmond on Instagram. That's probably the best. Hey, let's spell it all out. I earned every single dang letter within that word. So please do connect with me on Instagram. Also, you can connect with us at OurPanel TV. This episode will live on YouTube. So come back, share the link with your friends and family, subscribe to our channel. We thank you so much for giving us your time this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I missing? Oh, I thought someone was going to add to the convo. Dr. India? I'm sorry, we have two Dr. Rose, I meant. But yes, thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy to this episode today. And please do connect with us on all those platforms. Dr. Hall, thank you so much for joining us as our guest. We really appreciate your time. We will stay connected. And for everybody who engaged in the comments or just listened in, thank you so much for all of your, active comments and you engaging into the conversation today. So take care. Bye.
Bye.